Welcome, everybody. Today we are speaking about bioenergetics. This is a favorite topic of mine, one that I can totally nerd out on. Today I'm going to try to keep it not that techy though, and just really give you a synopsis of what bioenergetics is, why you would need it, how it can benefit you, and how you can access it. So with that in mind, we'll get started. So bioenergetics, at a very simple way to understand, is to be detecting or assessing the body field or the biofield. So what we're doing with this then is we're using different methods to assess the information flow and the energy in the body. So this can be done with quantum electrodynamics, which is now allowing you to look at the resonance of your body and compare that with the average of what would be considered healthy for different cells, different meridians, different energy flows in the body. And as this is happening in real time, that your either a voice or a scan of your body, either method, it is going back and forth continuously with an algorithm to decide when it looks at different metrics if this is within normal range or if this is something where they can see a priority is required, so attention is needed there. So in this case, you would want to get a scan done either by voice or using like a handheld device. And Ness, or Energy for Life, is a company that I work with, and they really are the pioneers of this technology, and they've been doing it for a lot of years. And so, even though it's been studied and it's been out for a long time, I would still really consider this on the forefront of modern healthcare revolution because not that many people know about it yet. And so, that's kind of what this video is for as well, too, is because there's so many people that can benefit from this technology and from this new type of medicine, but they just don't know what it is and how to access it. And so hopefully today we get a little bit of education and shine a little bit of light onto that. So Peter Fraser, that was one of the founders of Ness, or Energy for Life, used these tools of resonance to map out the human body. So I don't know the exact number, but they're looking something about 220 different measurements on the body right now. So this can be, again, like different organs in the body, different meridian systems, can be different like states in the brain, or where, you can see different emotional traumas or things in the body. Because as far-fetched and futuristic as that sounds, the truth is we all know by this point that we all are energy. Everything is vibration, light, sound. It's all frequency, right? Tesla knew this. Einstein knew this. Like all the people that we even look to for even just general physics that we all teach in school and we understand, these people taught us about frequency and about energy and how that impacts matter and the order of operation, right? Like energy is what controls, not controls. I'm going to take that back for a second. Energy is what fuels the body, right? Every other source in the body. So if you want to look at modern medicine, otherwise like allopathic Western medicine, we're looking at things like pharmaceutical drugs. Pharmaceutical drugs are used by biochemistry processes. So they're looking at a plant, or they're looking at some kind of constituent. They're breaking it down, seeing what properties does what, and then you're ingesting that, or you're injecting it, or whatever form that you're taking this, and then it's going to create a cascade of chemical bioreactions in the body. Now that does work, right? I mean, we know that diet's important, and I would never say that biochemistry is not important. We are all under God's laws and universal laws. And of course, even part of bioenergetics is going to be suggesting that you're going to eat organic foods and you're going to eat pasture-raised animals, or you're going to eat things that have a higher prana or energy or coherent energy to it. So bioenergetics doesn't dispute or argue with the biochemistry view of the world. It just says that biochemistry, there's like a hierarchy, right? So biochemistry is kind of at the bottom. So the matter of your body, the physical form, you can relate this to even yoga. So yoga says there's 5 koshas, or there's different bodies. So the physical matter of your body is going to be governed by this biochemistry process. But above that physical body, you have a mental body, you have an intellect body, right? You also have emotions, you have other things that are a little more subtle, they're a little harder to envision. But all of those things, no matter what I'm listing here, are going to need energy in the system. So we know that over the chemistry, we're going to be putting energy. Energy is a higher priority because without energy, none of these reactions, you can't have the Krebs cycle, you can't produce ATP, you can't have any molecular action, you can't do anything in the body unless you have energy in the system. So already there we know that bioenergetics is going to play a crucial role in our well-being, vitality, and optimization. But I think that there's a lot of things that have looked at energy medicine over the years. So I've studied a lot about the chakras, being a yoga teacher, and also even just looking at the meridian systems. I haven't studied in acupuncture, but I have been a participant in it and I've received it over the years. And because I have such an interest in these things, I've read lots of books about it. So I do understand the meridian system. And I practice Qigong on top of yoga. So, I mean, all of these things are types of energy medicine. You can throw things in there like Reiki as well, too, right? Anything that is just kind of looking at how we can move energy in the body and how we can open up the flows in case anything gets stuck or blocked. Because, really, when we do have physical manifestations in our body of illness and disease, it is because we have a blocked energy. There's something like that's what creates the signals of pain, right? Is it that there is something in the body that isn't flowing correctly. And because it's stuck, that could be an ache, it could be a pain, it can be throbbing, it can be headache. Whatever symptom is manifesting is really just a signal that's being given, into the brain to just say, hey, there's something that's not flowing right here that needs attention. So with the bioenergetic scan, we are looking at the energetic system. But what I think about bioenergetics and this program with NASA Energy for Life that is so revolutionary, and it really goes beyond even the traditions of traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, because it's not just looking at energy now, it's looking at the information field too. So now you're really getting beyond just, okay, so we have the allopathic medicine, which is really at the chemical level. We have the Chinese medicine and the Indian Ayurvedic medicine, which is looking now, even yoga, looking at energy body, and they understood that energy body. But we are going now into the realm of quantum physics. So when you look at the bioenergetic scans that are being provided, you're looking at the information field as well. So the information field, I won't get too in depth about quantum theory, but in the field, all potential is possible. So all energy is everywhere, all information, all possibilities, everything is just in the field. And until you, observe something, until you put intention behind it, until you do some process, that will collapse all of the potential down and it'll manifest and materialize it into an actual spoken word, into an idea, into a health condition, into a movement, like whatever it is, everything it happens twice. You think it once and then you do the thing. So this is the idea that there's an information field as well, and this information field can be impacted. And maybe back in the day, because I really do believe in yoga and the ancient philosophies behind it, and I think it actually pairs 100% with anything that science has come up with now. They actually overlap a lot, and science is just really proving the things that these sages in the past already knew. Perhaps the reason why when you look in the text, you don't get a lot of on the information field from that long ago is because maybe we weren't that impacted by the information field. Maybe that one just kind of flowed a little bit more natural. And I mean, I can only guess and speculate. And the reason I'm going to say I'm just making this up right now, but I would think it's because of the 5G towers and because of the Wi-Fi and, even this right now, sitting in front of a computer, you're watching on a screen. I mean, anyone who doesn't believe in bioenergetics, the very fact that we're doing this right now proves the fact that information can be transmitted invisibly all around the world, and that there can be multiple signals happening at the same time, and it's still somehow able, to reach from one thing to another and manifest and materialize in a way that makes sense and is organized. Well, our bodies and our thoughts and our emotions and disease and the food we eat, like all of these things are also just information patterns, their frequencies. And so if we get too disrupted with the information that's coming into us, all of a sudden now that system that maybe historically always never had to be addressed in these ancient texts is because we didn't need to address it. right? Everything was just kind of working fine, but we have introduced so many artificial things into the environment now that it is interacting with our field, and also because a lot of the things we're looking at now are out of the spectrum of what would normally have been there. Like before, in days past, we would have had to work on things like, the cycles of the sun and the moon and the planets and seasons and the 24-hour circadian cycle. Like you would have had all of these rhythms and you would have just been part of them. So you wouldn't have to think about them too much. But in the artificial lives that we live now, we are bombarded with so many things. And it's not even just those source things like not enough time in front of the sun or putting suntan lotion on to block the radiation that does need to hit our skin to produce vitamin D and all of these things in our body. But we also are just bombarded with too much information and fake information. And I'm not saying this like, oh, fake news or those things, which is an issue too, because clearly we consume way too much media. We consume a lot of negative media, which is another thing yoga teaches us, pratyahara, or sense withdrawal. I won't go into depth about that right now, but just to say that we are experiencing information that's not just local to our village or our community where we can maybe have some impact. We're looking at news that's, states away or countries away, around oceans away, and all those things are being taken in, and maybe it's a little bit much for our information field. And then even just like the food we eat. So speaking again about how, you got to look at the biochemistry and still take that serious because we need sustenance to live. When you're taking in food, I want to think of the name of the scientist. I might be wrong on this, but I think it's Fitz Albert Pop. Maybe I could be wrong. You have to look that up to confirm it. But he was doing research on biophotons. So he was looking at actually how all of our cells create emissions and light that come out of it. And that's how our body can seemingly communicate so quickly, where you can't have biochemistry as a solution because our endocrine, our limbic system, all of these, even the nervous system, right? Even that has a time between synapse and neuron and axon, and then like it takes time to move there, which is why there's a delay between like stepping on something and pulling back. Same thing, like when you eat something, there's like a process of like, the amylase and the prolase and breaking it down, right? The carbs and the fats and what it's going to get turned into in your stomach. And then, ultimately how that gets used and transported throughout your bloodstream. And that takes time. But other things happen, and it seems to happen so instantaneously that the only answer could be that it's happening at the speed of light, which means that our cells are communicating like a little light show in our body, and the lights are going off. And what I found particularly interesting about this is that when they were looking at cells and looking at the light that emits out of them. So cells that are healthy have a low level of light, but a very high level of coherence. So around the whole membrane of the cell, it's kind of like an even glow of light. And that was an efficient way to communicate because you could communicate to that cell next to you and then all the way through like instantaneously, like how you would think about in the quantum field. And I know this is a lot of information. It's hard to explain some of these things because there's so many moving pieces, but think of the quantum field as a sheet of paper. If you pull on one side of the paper, the other side instantly moves. It didn't need to transmit like, little particle to particle across the paper. The whole thing just pulled. And so your body works in the same way. It doesn't need to have like necessarily just like an attached cell to cell to cell. It's like the whole body just understood right away, and it moves at the speed of light, which is these photons. So when they were looking at the photons, then the healthy cells had low level of energy but high coherence. But then when they started to look at like abnormal cells, what did they find? So they found that with cancer cells that people were having lower levels of lights and very incoherent light, which would make sense because these cells are failing to replicate correctly, right? They were becoming tumors and malignant, and right. So you would think that. What I found extremely interesting about this, and I'm really having to do some research and kind of unpack it a little bit, seeing as I actually have MS myself. And I was always told MS is like an anomaly in the medical community because they really can't understand it at all, like what causes it and what it is and how to stop it. But this particular researcher, when he looked at MS cells, they emit a ridiculous amount of light. So way too much light is coming out of them. So, MS, one of the biggest symptoms people go on disability for is fatigue. And now it makes sense to me because if your cells are just instantly, whatever energy comes in, just spitting it all out, there's obviously something that's impaired with the regulation, storage, and communication flow. And then you that makes sense even when you just think about it from a physical level now too, because with MS you have impaired nerve function. So already you can see at the chemical and the physical level, there's impaired communication, which they know from the myelin in the sheaths of your the nerves. But now you can even see it just at an energetic level, just in the light level, that that's happening at the same time. So this information field is being distorted. And another reason to go back to like eating healthy on this one too is when they looked at those cells with the biophotons in it, the cell they could distinguish by looking just through this technology which cells came from conventionally grown tomatoes, for example, or ones that were grown that were like GMO'd and glyphosate and pesticides on them. Because again, the coherence in the modified food, the pattern was incoherent and it wasn't right. And that goes back to what I always thought even before I even found bioenergetics. My kids would make fun of me because I used to tell them I'm a hologram and that they are too, and they think I'm crazy, but we really are holographic. And we really are empty space that's just vibrating, right? That's giving the illusion of this body. And I mean, that's not woohooing out there. I mean, all standard science knows that barely anything is actually matter or mass. It's all just empty space. So the food is the same thing. The apple you're eating is just a little package of information. And if you think of yourself along the same analogy as a computer, whatever you're bringing in, whatever program or app or whatever it is you're going to be putting into the system, if it doesn't understand and it isn't made to speak with the operating system or the hardware that you're putting it into, it's going to corrupt and it's going to malfunction. And that's the same thing that we're doing when we put this modified food that our body has no idea what it is. Junk food in particular they looked at, and it had the same very incoherent pattern, because again you're processing it. So you're taking something that nature intended to fit with our bodies, you're taking that and you're breaking it down and you're overcooking it and you're frying it and you're reconstituting it with other negative unhealthy ingredients, and the more processing you do, the more incoherent the energy becomes. So when we do these scans for people, one of the first things we're looking at is source energy. So source would be how we're interacting with our greater environment. So these are going to be things like, time spent in the sun and whether we're going to bed at the right times and waking at the right times. Is the amount of movement we're doing correct? Are we hydrating, oxygenation, right? Diet, nutrition. So, we're going to see on the scans things that are going to come up that your body, it's not diagnosing anything. So just to make that clear as a disclaimer. So these scans don't diagnose, but it is amazing how all the scans I've done so far, whatever it is that people seem to be complaining about, or they have had, a label put on them, you do see those patterns showing up throughout the scan. But what I find more interesting is you get these other patterns that are uncovering things that are related to that disease state that you didn't even know until you start unpacking how the energy actually flows in the body, and it moves for more than, like a brain issue isn't just brain, it can also be in the gut, and right, it can be in your heart, and the coherence, like it's never just one place. And the energy scans seem to be more holistic in the sense that it gets everything. And also sometimes it's picking up things that are not yet manifested physically, and you're trying to prevent it from getting there. So maybe you're just seeing something on the scan that is not quite working right yet, but it hasn't gotten to the point where you're actually going to see that manifesting at the physical level of disease or pain or medical issues. So the other things that the scans are going to look at is you're going to go next to like the drivers of energy. So this is now when I was talking about before, just like the meridians and the chakras, where it's just saying like, is there energy in the body, right? Are your little vortexes or wheels, are they spinning correctly? Are they balanced? So this is now going to start looking at things like that, but it's going to look at it and break it down into different parts of the body, right? And it's interesting because they see it as the same progression as how you developed embryonically. So as a baby, like what was the first parts of the cells in the body that start to grow, and those are the primary systems. And as that you develop as a human, and it's even past being born because it happens later in childhood, still our brains are developing in other systems, right, our hormonal system. So these drivers of energy, they do follow a certain kind of pattern that makes sense organically with how our bodies work. So you look at those and how those can be impacted and what corrective measures you can take. And then you also look at the integrators. And this is more now getting to like the idea of the energy system or the information system. So now you're going to go a little deeper beyond just the energy, and you're going to say, well, but how is that energy, like what is it doing? What information is getting where that needs to get there? And then what can we correct there? Now, beyond that, there's many other functions that the scan can look at, as far as like things that get stuck in the brain as trauma, different kinds of emotional states that you might have, any issues that you might have come across with like heavy metals or toxicity, mold, solvents, exposure to things. And again, though, it's not necessarily saying that you have an active exposure to that type of mold or whatever your scan is showing. It's just saying that at some point you might have come into contact with this and your system just wasn't able to process it correctly. Then there's still something in the energy and the information field that hasn't kind of gone back to homeostasis or gone back to regulating correctly. Or I mean, or it could be an acute exposure. I mean, the scan is not going to give us that level of detail. It's just going to show up saying, hey, your frequency and your resonance with this one particular thing is off, and maybe we should look at more into like what that could be about. Right. And so there is a little bit of like intuitive work involved in it too, because even on some of the emotional scales too, like, if you have something coming up about like, say recently on scans from me, I had grief coming up frequently. And at the time, I'm not grieving in particular. I haven't lost anybody, but a very close friend of mine lost their teenage son recently. And I was feeling so much compassion for their grieving that it was showing up on my scan. And so sometimes you have to like ask more questions, and you have to start to think about how some of these things showing up, and how that's actually playing out in your life, because the energy, it just shows you what it is, right? It's not like when you go to the doctors and they specifically test on a metric where they say, this is the normal range, we put you in here. That means you need X, Y, and Z medicine. The energetic work is a little bit more fluid and a little bit more intuitive. But I would also say, though, it gets at the root cause, right? So you're not chasing symptoms with energy medicine. The point of it is not to treat one particular symptom. The point is to give corrective measures to the overall system. So you're trying to get it back to a point where your body knows how to heal itself. You're just going to give it the energy, you're going to give it the information that's corrected, so that it can start to get back on track and do what it needs to do. So after you have these scan results and they come in, I'd be able to then recommend to you different infoceuticals based on your scan results. So infoceuticals, now we're going to go down another rabbit hole of of physics that's completely interesting. So if any of you have ever heard about easy water, so this is the idea that water, when you put it by a substance that is water loving or hydrophobic, right? So it depends on what you're putting beside it, that the water that's beside it will start to create an exclusion zone. So the water will move and to create a different magnetic charge. And I want to say that's like the net negative charge in between, and it pushes everything else on the outside. And that is going to create almost like a magnetic force, right? Similar to what PEMF is doing in your body when you give the negative ions inside the cell. And you have positive ones on the outside, it creates a nice plump cell, which then can open the ion channels and the pumps for sodium, potassium. It opens the cell up and it makes it easier to detox and to get nutrients in. Same thing almost with the exclusion zone. Like the principle is kind of similar, that it's creating like a battery, right, of positive and negative. And this is interesting not only just because it can create this magnetic charge in the body, which is energizing you, but it can also like push out toxins to the outside. So you can use this for water filtration, you can use this for a lot of things. And so this also means though that you can store information in purified water. And that's also really interesting. So with the infoceuticals, what they've done is they've got mineral water. They have put in the building blocks of what I'm talking about, those ion pumps, right? You have magnesium to calcium and sodium to potassium, and they're based on magnetic differences. That's how they move through the pump. So they're putting that into the mineral water, and they're also ozonating it. Now, I also have done a lot of ozone therapy. I own an ozone machine as well as part of my own care. And I'll talk about that maybe in another video soon. But ozone does amazing things. And I'm not going to go into it here because I've got too many things already to talk about. But suffice to say, ozone does amazing things also in the body, to create more oxygen and to get rid of any like bacteria, virus, anything that's detrimental in the body. So once they have that water, they take 10,000 volts of electricity and they pump frequency into the water, and they play music. It's almost like playing Emoto, I want to call him. He is a Japanese scientist who played music to water and then froze it, and it created like different crystal patterns in the water. And depending on what type of sound or frequency you played to the water before you froze it, it depended whether you got coherent, beautiful structures or whether you got incoherence and disorganized. Your body is much the same way. So when you're getting this structured water, they're taking the frequency that we've already mapped out and decided this is, the healthy frequency for the liver meridian or for the pancreas or for whatever system. And they play that frequency into the water. And the water, just like if any of you know about a homeopathy, right? It's this idea that the water can hold memory, right? And we know it holds the charge from the easy water. So the water is charged now. You've put in the right kind of battery inducing minerals into it. You've ozonated it. You've put this correct frequency into it. And now whatever your scan showed, you're going to buy the infoceutical that corresponds to correcting that one system that seems to have a priority showing up. And you're going to take those drops, and it's safe because it's water that's just got minerals in it, but it's also putting information back into the body. And I can tell you, like, from my own experience with these so far, that by month number 3 of me doing it personally, I've seen dramatic changes. So my MS was about 90% recovered just from all the other things I had done, but my last 10% was still lingering, which is why I'm always on the quest for new things to bring not only to my own health, but then to share with everybody else. And this one just blows my mind. This one has been amazing, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. And I'm really excited that I've become a certified practitioner, a bioenergetic, and a wellness coach, because I know that this is the right thing. Like everything that I'd already researched and everything I already believed pairs perfectly with this. And all of the other amazing scientists that I'd already been looking into, they all share in the evolution of this technology because they've all played little bits in our understanding of how, quantum health and, quantum physics is working. And so, the infoceuticals is one part of it, and that's accessible to everybody. There's a few contraindications, and the only one that's really like 100% no would be if you have an organ transplant. And that's also similar to when I treat people for PEMF. And the reason for that is because you are on purpose actually suppressing the immune system. So you don't want to do anything to those kinds of clients that would increase their immune system function, because that might make them reject their organ. So in this case, you're going to leave them alone because we know that their information field and their energy field is disrupted. And that is intentional because in this case, whether it's not, it's not good to have those systems be out of whack, but in their case, they will die without it being out of whack. So they have to weigh out the balance, and clearly staying alive, even if that means you have impaired energy, is the driving force there. So the other thing that's available after taking infoceuticals is a really amazing new device for me anyway. It's not new. It's been around for 30 years probably, but this device particularly for me is new. It's called My Health. And it is so cool. So I have a PEMF machine, well, several of them, but my machines are designed to be a high intensity, but low frequency, right? So you're dealing with frequencies that are in the human health range under 100 hertz, right? You like, what are the brain waves, right? Alpha, beta, theta, right? Those kinds of states. And then the lower ranges that are made, for your human health. But the PMF is putting high intensity. So it's putting tons and tons of energy into the body, which is why you can have rapid results in healing for things that otherwise you wouldn't. This device was a bit different because it's got a couple different technologies. So one, it has a TENS which is transdermal electro neurostimulation. I think I got that right. And that one is more what you would see at like physiotherapy clinics, where they're just putting like a patch onto the skin, and it's just like providing an electrical stimulation just to kind of the top layer. And that, I mean, clearly that has lots of research and study behind it too, and its benefits. It has PEMF in it, but in this case, the PEMF is lower intensity but very pinpointed specifically for the frequency. So now, based on the same mapping of the human body field, they now were able to look at like what specifically is the frequency range that's required to go into your, your pericardium, or into your lung driver, or into, your nerve integrator, whatever these things are. What is that specific frequency? And they can pinpoint it even further than that. So say we're looking at somebody's entire, bladder meridian, but along the meridian, the scan is able to pick up, maybe there's not a priority on the entire meridian system. Maybe there's just like one point there that has an issue. So now you can take this device and you can place it on the actual acupuncture point, and play the frequency specific to helping that meridian or that system. And then it also has another technology involved in it, and this is more about like a feedback method. So it's like it's constantly, the whole time that you're using the device, it's putting the frequency into the body, but it's also reading the body's frequency back. So in real time, as your energy system modifies based on the frequency being put in, that modified result or consequence is going to come back into the machine, and it's going to be able to like go back and forth until you recreate the coherence. Now, the machine also comes with some adapters and like carbon pads and other things that you can use for different types of issues that might come up. Now, what I think is cool about this one is, and I know it's out there for a lot of people, but anyone who's come this far in the conversation, I hope that you're here because you understand how these things work and that it is possible. But you can use this remotely. So much the same way that people do Reiki remotely, is you can use this machine too. And again, that's not too hard to conceptualize, really, if you understand how this is happening right now that I'm talking to you, right? I am speaking into this microphone, and this camera is taking a photo of me, and it's breaking all of that down into separate little frequencies. It's packaging that information, and it's putting it either through a wire, it's putting it through telecommunication systems, and on your end, it's picking it up and it's reintegrating all that information and putting it into cohesive, coherent audio and visual. This machine is the same way. So once the intention is set, and once I'm here and you're there, and we have the intention that we're going to share this energy exchange, you'll be able to receive that remotely as well. Now, on body and in person is also an option that, I mean, you can get some really immediate feedback. Actually, when you watch videos of them doing on body, you can actually hear the sound difference as the machine moves across your skin. There'll be like little areas where the magnetic differences has changed, and you'll get like a little stickiness, where the machine doesn't glide as easy, or the sound changes a little bit. Now, clearly, you won't get that kind of feedback remotely, but it's still, in theory and in principle, still works. Now, for myself, because I'm not actually like a massage therapist or physiotherapist, I don't do on-body treatments, but I can do it in person, like just like touching you like on your clothes on the outside, which works, or even a few inches away from you, which still works perfectly fine, because that's the same way that you can have your cell phone on speaker and you're still going to hear it. You don't need to have it touching your ear in order to have the conversation make sense. So I hope that all makes sense. So I mean, all of these new technologies, really what they're doing is just speeding up the healing and also getting at the real cause of it. Because if you take, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory because you have a headache, okay, you know what? I'm not going to lie, Advil works pretty good. I've taken it before and your headache goes away. But there are there's still a delay in it coming into your body chemically. And then you have to metabolize that chemical, right? So you can get ulcers in your stomach, you can disrupt your microbiome. There are all these unintended consequences from that type of treatment. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should never do allopathic medicine. I've had C-sections, I've had surgeries. When needed, it is, appropriate. But if you really have like a chronic issue, or you have something subtly going on, and a lot of times the doctors don't even know what it is, instead of trying to mask your symptom, which then, it just pops up somewhere else, or you create a new problem, or it actually starts to snowball and it gets worse and worse, why not try to treat the energy, right? Why not put more energy into the body, because then it can heal itself. And if more energy into the body isn't the only problem, maybe it's the information field. And if that's the case, then let's put corrective information in there. So if you have the right information in there, you have the correct amount of energy in there, and now we also are going to modify that with lifestyle things, because part of being a wellness coach isn't just to say, and I do the same thing with my PEMF clients. If I give you extra energy today, what are you going to do with it? Because if you come here because you have chronic fatigue syndrome, or you have cancer, and I've given you energy, are you going to stop on the way to have a fight with your spouse and then grab some McDonald's? Like, then you've wasted all of the benefit of what you were given. So, with coaching involved in this, and I also do neuro linguistic programming for people that are having a hard time, sticking with goals or being consistent. I can help with that as well. But the scan results are, yes, we can do immediate things with the pharmaceuticals and with My Health or PEMF, but it really is meant as a stepping stone to do bigger, more meaningful, long lasting changes in your life, right? And to start to gain an insight. Well, like, once you can see it on the scan and you can see what's coming up, hopefully you get the insight that will motivate you to want to make sustaining, lasting changes. Because, there's so many other smaller things that you can do that not only can help overcome health issues, but just maintain once you're healthy, right? Things like, waking up and walking to watch the sunrise, and sun gazing as the sun goes down, right? And then even if you're going to watch TV, putting the blue glass over, so that you're keeping your circadian rhythms better, right? Very small things. Try to eat organic when you can, like some of the other things we've talked about, right? Really worry about how your water is filtered. All of those things, I mean, they might not be the immediate thing that's going to change something, but once we start addressing all of these things, you are going to need to put other effort into changing your life. So I hope that was, I know it was a lot, and I probably didn't even cover half of what I wanted to, because it's one of those topics that I feel like I could talk about all day, and there's so many little pieces of it that all kind of come together, and I know it's a lot of information. So instead of all the tech stuff, if that was too much, I'm sorry. Really just understand that this can really get to the root of your problem, and stop it from becoming an ongoing issue in your life, and really just put it to bed all and for once. And then, really look then with this new second lease you have, with new energy and information, on what other things you can do to really keep your life moving on the path and to the destination that's going to bring you the greatest purpose, joy, and fulfillment. So with all of that, I'm going to leave it for there. If you're interested more in bioenergetics, and perhaps you're even wanting to get a scan with me, just visit me at energyovermatter.com, and you'll find information under the page about bioscans, and just all throughout the website as well too. And you can go ahead and book a consultation, and we can get you set up to do a scan and see what we can do to help your energy today. So for everybody out there, then, have a blessed day and a blessed life. Namaste.